We just have to get to September 1st. I mean, I've been telling myself that since the start of May. It's so close, my pretties. Autumn is nearly in our grasp. Spooky season is on the horizon. And while arguably spooky season is every day when you live in my library, the arrival of September 1st does somewhat let the genie out of the bottle. So yes, this video is about dark academia books, otherwise known as the books that are about to become my personality for the next couple of months. And welcome to another video. I know we do a lot of joshing around here. We like us a little tee, but I'm really not joking about this one. As soon as September the 1st hits, something in my DNA changes. The summer dresses get relegated to the back of the wardrobe. The autumn candles come out. Pumpkins start mysteriously appearing all around my house. Well, I mean, new pumpkins in addition to the ones that I already had. And this year I've taken to making my own. But along with my wardrobe transformation and my house fully entering its Sanderson sisters phase, my reading also massively shifts. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am not a reader who could be said to read cheery books overly often. I don't read a lot of contemporary romance, for example. I don't read a lot of cozy fantasy. I don't read a lot of things designed to give you warm fuzzies. Because despite the fact that if you carve me in half, I'm kind of squishy in the inside like a pumpkin, the outside of me is encased with a hard shell. And I like my books like I like my shells. I like pain. I like mental anguish. I like betrayal and existential angst. And I like dark academia. And as I said to you guys very recently, dark academia is becoming a larger and larger percentage of what I pick up. And sometimes those novels are genuine campus novels, novels that are set in big crumbling old universities, but sometimes they're more along the lines of things we do to our friends, where the university setting is the thing that ties together this group, but it's not necessarily what the book is about. It's just that the book itself has those dark academia vibes. Obsessive friendship groups, secrets, lies, what's a dead body or two amongst friends, and sometimes they're more along the lines of the cloisters, where we may have left the actual academic institution itself behind, but we are still absolutely obsessed with our subject, and that subject drives us to do things that we never thought that we would, and puts us in some pretty harrowing situations. And as my love for dark academia has gone up, so too have the TBR piles of dark academia books. And so that's what I'm here to bring you guys today. This is my imminent TBR of dark academia reads. These are the books that are going to be seeing me through September and then November and December, because we know that October is the month of the haunted house, the sacred month of things that literally go bump in the night. And partnering with me today in my mission to bring you the darkest of dark academia books are the lovely people at Ana Luisa. They are determined to bring you sustainable, beautiful pieces that will last an absolute lifetime. You know, the kinds of pieces that would actually feature in a dark academia novel. Like if you found this ring wrapped with a letter in a secret envelope that had been hidden behind a brick for years and years and years, you wouldn't be shocked, right? And that just kind of speaks to the versatility of Ana Luisa's pieces. Because my vibes swing wildly these days from mossy cottage witch to kind of like dark, mysterious clairvoyant with a penchant for cats. The kind of bright, whimsical colour block that I associate with children's TV presenters. And I wear my same favourite Ana Luisa pieces with every single one of those looks. And every one of those pieces both look completely effortless and yet completely intentional at the same time. Ana Luisa have just recently launched this range of zodiac necklaces. They are so dainty and light that it barely feels like I am wearing anything at all, and yet sitting on its own, this necklace is a statement piece. It's giving dreamy, floaty, mysterious Pisces vibes, and it's not even trying that hard. Neither particularly is this new ring of mine. I so rarely wore rings with stones in them before Ana Luisa because I could never find anything that really felt like it suited me, and now I almost never take these off. Honestly guys, I am one of Ana Luisa's VIP ambassadors for a reason. I really believe in what they do. And all of Ana Luisa's pieces are tested for tarnish and wear and tear through everyday normal life. I literally wear this ring every day. It is an incredibly thin band, and yet it has never scratched, dented, or in any way failed to look its best. So if you too have been persuaded by the dark academia vibes, then check out Ana Luisa using my link down below where you will get 20% off of your purchase. Let's face it, every little helps. Alrighty then, let's get into the dark and stabby books. And the first two books that I have on this list are a little bit more stabby and a little bit less academia. They are more along the lines of things we do to our friends. That dark academia element was really just something which bound this set of people together. People with a very similar personality and a very similar way of looking at the world. And from then on, we followed what that friendship group did outside of university. So the first book that I have got for you is I Have Some Questions For You by Rebecca Mackay. I hauled this a couple of months ago, and the more and more that I hear about it, the more and more it's being tagged as dark academia, which makes me very happy, because originally I just thought that it was a thriller set at a school, which is very different from the dark academia vibes. Because just to be clear, when I'm looking for dark academia books, I'm not only looking for obsessive friend groups, I'm also looking for the feelings that that book gives me. Sometimes those feelings are leaning heavily on the gothic vibe, where everything feels dark and ominous and oppressive. It leaves you feeling kind of suffocated, a little bit like you want to keep looking over your shoulder in case somebody's following you, in case somebody knows things that you know. And for me in dark academia, one of the things that I'm looking for is usually a plot that is set over a course of time. So in a lot of like traditional dark academia novels that model themselves after things like The Secret History, those things might take place over school terms, but I specifically look for a plot where it's hinted at the beginning that something horrible happened in the past and that we are now following those characters afterwards, after the bad thing has happened, and figuring out what exactly it is that they're going to do about it. And I Have Some Questions For You is exactly that. So it turns out that I'm developing a bit of a dark academia instinct, a nose for the particular bouquet of a dark academia book. Because believe me when I say I picked this one out of thin air based on the synopsis, as this author's last novel was a kind of like misery fest of queer AIDS history, which although beautifully written had absolutely no emotional nuance in it. It was pretty much just sadness all the way through. And also, to be perfectly transparent before I talk about this one, I did have some issues with the way that queer history was used in the last one to be yet another sad queer book. Like the kind of books that exist solely to hurt and don't present any kind of queer joy or allow queer characters to have queer joy. But the writing in that book, man, the writing and the dialogue were just so good that I said to myself the minute I put it down, whatever she brought out next, I would try, and it just so happened to be this. So this one is about Bodhi Kane. She is a film producer and also a podcaster who has made herself very successful in her life, but she has done so by distancing herself from the past. Because in her past there was a very famous murder, that of one of her roommates at a New Hampshire boarding school where she spent her college years. The way that Talia was murdered and the person who they ended up convicting for it, who was somebody who worked at the school, have all kind of been the subject of controversy for years. Nobody's entirely sure if the circumstances that were reported or assumed by police were actually the real ones, or if indeed they have the right person for the murder. The thing is that Bodhi can't quite let this go, and no matter how much she has distanced herself and her career from this, when the school extend an invitation to her to teach a filmmaking class, she can't stop herself. And that is the thing that said to me, this is a dark academia novel, because she is being drawn back in. She feels powerless not to go back to a place that she knows will probably hurt her, to a place where she knows she's probably going to unpick pieces of her life, and I love that. That makes me very, very happy indeed. And so this one follows Bodhi as she cannot help but pick at those scabs, as she can't help but start investigating the murder again. And the next one that I have that is along those same kind of one foot in thriller lines is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This one is an incredibly hyped book, but when I saw it around, I literally just read it as, oh, this is a thriller, and it's kind of a locked door thriller, which at the time I was seeing an awful lot of, and the books that I was picking up weren't doing doing it very well, and so I kind of dismissed this one, but it has kept clawing its way back onto my radar, and the more I hear people talk about it, the more they're like, yeah, that's a dark academia book, up and down. So it has made its way slowly into my life and onto my TBR. This one is exactly as I have some questions for you about a person going back to their high school. In this case, they're going back after 10 years, I think, for their 10-year reunion. But our main character, Jessica, is determined, as I'm sure we all would be after a 10-year reunion, to go back to her school and to very, very much portray herself as the person that she wants people to see that she really is. Like beautiful, polished, confident, the perfect Southern belle. She wants to erase the memory of her that people held from high school and show that she's got it all stitched back together. Because the last memory that those people have of her in high school is the way that she was in the wake of one of her friends being brutally murdered. This friend was part of a very tight-knit group of 6, which absolutely fractured, broke to pieces and scattered after the murder. And while for some of them in the friendship group they are more than happy to go with that, some people didn't have the luxury, like Jessica did, of completely leaving her school and moving states and becoming another person. Other people had to stay there, and those people are less happy to let this murder just go unsolved. And so when these 6 friends find themselves back at this reunion, not only do they discover that they've been hiding secrets from each other for 10 years, but they also discover that there is somebody there, somebody who wants to trap them, somebody who wants them all to tell one nugget of truth. And it has what it says on the back of the book as a dark campus setting, because this one is told in dual timelines, which is again a big thing that I see in dark academia novels, because they almost always contain a murder. They are almost always told backwards in some way. So in this one we're getting direct flashes between the present and the past when everything was happening. And so for a good deal of it we're spending time on that dark campus. And I don't know about you, but I'm into it. And now I somehow have 2 of hers on my shelf without ever having tried any of them. So let's hope we like this one. Next up we have the ever infamous Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a book that no matter what setting I am in when I bring it up, somebody will have strong opinions about. And those strong opinions are very polarised. People either absolutely love this book and completely get what it was doing, or absolutely hate it. And there seems to be nobody at all in the middle, which does make me a trifle nervous because I'm looking forward to this one a lot. I guess at least if I end up being in the camp of completely hating it, at least you guys will get a ton of salt in your tops and bottoms wrap up. So this one is about Samantha, who is a complete outcast in her school. She has joined an MFA program at a very, very selective, very competitive New England school, and she does not fit the mould of any of the other students who have ended up on that program. And just to top it all off, not only does she not fit the mould, but she's also a scholarship student, so she is poor, and her classmates are not poor. This is not uncommon for dark academia novels either. The sort of commentary on social strata and class is very prevalent. There is a lot of discourse in dark academia about who education is for and what it is for. And also in books like Babel, there's clearly like the taking apart of the idea of academia, gatekeeping, and also like who gets to write the victor story and stuff. And I think any really good dark academia book that's like worth its salt should have at least a smattering of that in there. But just when Samantha thinks that there's absolutely no way she is going to be able to survive in this extremely elite school with these extremely bitchy students, she is invited to a thing called a smut salon, which I have fallen in love with just because of the name, and into a group of students who call themselves bunnies. And that's how they refer to each other, like, hi bunny, okay bunny, which is a bit weird and alarming in and of itself. And that is something that Samantha finds. She finds that the bunnies are overly sweet to each other, that they are massively solicitous to each other, and that they don't let their members go ever, because they spend a lot of time grooming them, essentially. But as with any other outsider, when they are finally admitted into the like secret society, Samantha is just delighted. Samantha just finally feels like she has made it, and she doesn't ever consider that she's ditched her best friend, and also she's ditched that old version of herself that thought things about people like the bunnies. And then obviously as she gets drawn deeper and deeper into their society, she realises that things are not exactly as they seem. Now, the only thing about this one is that as well as being tagged as dark academia, it's often tagged as speculative horror. And a lot of dark academia does obviously have one foot in horror. But in this case, I have some questions. And the thing is, it sounds like everything about this book is inherently a spoiler. Nobody has been able to tell me why it's speculative horror without spoiling it. And so I guess I'm just gonna have to read it and find out. Next up, I have a bit of a classic of a book that features dark academia, but it has only recently been fully enfolded in that definition. Because this book was written in 2005, and at the time that it was written, dark academia wasn't a massive genre. Because like it or hate it, when The Secret History came out in 1992, there was like a pause while publishing caught up, then there was a little upturn in things that were vaguely dark academia-ish, and then there was just the odd book in the genre really up until the last 5 or 6 years when it's had a massive boom. But yeah, back in 2005, this one wasn't necessarily tagged as anything other than sort of weird literary fiction, like one foot in historical fiction maybe, and then one foot in maybe paranormal. And that's the reason why I dismissed this book for so many years as well, and the reason why I only recently picked it up based on a recommendation of a friend who was like, no, this is very much in this genre and you will very much love it. And that book is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. So this book is set in the 70s when our main character, a 16-year-old girl, goes into her father's study to try and be close to him. Her father has recently tragically passed away, and literally all she has is all of his research, reams and reams of paper, none of which on the surface tells her a lot about her father, but she desperately hopes that something in here will help her to get closer to him. However, the thing that she discovers when she's going through his papers is not the thing that she thought she was going to discover. It's not a diary, but instead a packet of papers which has been hidden away in amongst all of this research, which hints at her father having been able to put the pieces together to find the real Dracula. In these papers, she discovers that historians for centuries have almost been there, that they've got closer and closer every time, but nobody has actually been able to find the real link to the real Dracula, the actual vampire, which does exist. The whole like historian bundles of paper, tons of research spilling up the walls vibe is very part of dark academia. That whole idea of overworking yourself and staying awake by candlelight and coffee alone is pervasive in this genre. And while in real life I absolutely do not glamorize the hustle and think that it is incredibly toxic, within a dark academia setting, only thing about this book that scares me is that the paperback has Bible thin pages and it is over 700 pages long. So I think when I pick this one up, I'm gonna have to be ready for the commitment. Next up is a book which also elicits massively controversial opinions from everybody that I have spoken to about it. And on the surface, I can kind of see why. This book is These Violent Delights by Micah Nemeriver, and it is sort of a queer take on The Secret History, or at least that's half of how it's marketed. The other half of how it's marketed, however, is Call Me By Your Name, which is one of the most disturbing commercial pieces of queer fiction that I have ever read. And so on one hand I'm like, oh, queer secret history, and on the other hand I'm like, oh, but I am also going to put myself through it. For science! Or for you. And for potential salt content, I guess, if it doesn't work out. And I mean, that's always the good thing about DNFing or hating books, because it's never like I don't have anything to say about them. This one is about Paul and Julian. They meet at university in the 1970s. Again, I am very up for like 70s, 80s and 90s setting settings in fiction, although I don't know how I feel about the fact that they're technically also being classed as historical fiction at this point. Do I have to collect more cats, perm my hair and start wafting about in caftans? Is that the age demographic that I'm in? Although, when Paul and Gillian meet, Paul is not in a great place in his life. His father has recently died. He feels like the only way that he can produce any meaningful, worthwhile art is if he is in the depths of depression, and so he never actively does anything to make himself feel better. And he is struggling so hard at this college because once again he comes from an intensely working class background in an environment that is very not that. But there he meets Julian. Julian is wealthy, he is careless, he very much swims against the grain of the general kind of environment in their university, and when Paul meets him he finally feels like he meets somebody who understands him. Even though they come from wildly different backgrounds, they have a lot in common about what they think about the people in the institution that they are currently existing around. But the problem with these kind of little elite friendships is that they do become obsessive and they do become insular, and then as the outside world starts to press on them more and more, you start to wonder what you will do to keep this little insular bubble that just the two of you exist in, especially if the other person is actively trying to escape it. This one to me seems like it's leaning further onto like the toxic side of obsessive friendships. Not necessarily that we will cover up a murder together, although this has also been tagged as a thriller, so I'm guessing that a murder happens somewhere in there, but more like the I want you and nobody else can have you type of toxic friendship. And I am so hoping that the queerness in this book is again not just there to provide some sort of misery to the background. I have everything crossed, but you just never know with dark books. Next up I have one that I am definitely classing as dark academia, although I don't see anybody necessarily talking about it as part of the genre. To me, everything in it screams gothic and oppressive and obsessive, and those are definitely the buzzwords for this video. And that book is The Dark Between the Trees by Fiona Barnett. Again, I hauled this a couple of months ago, and since then I have just never been able to stop thinking about it, especially because I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it since I bought it, and it was a blind buy at the time. Like, I'd never seen it before. It was sitting half price on a Waterstones table and I was like, that sounds amazing. And so here it is. I am determined to read this one before the end of the year. So this is definitely a book which sounds like it is written in multiple timelines. In the present day, we have an expedition group of academics and scientists who are heading into Moresby Woods, led by Dr. Alice Christopher. Alice is a historian and an academic, and she has spent her entire career, her whole career, looking into this one mystery. Because back in 1643, a massive group of parliamentary soldiers were ambushed in the north of England in a place called Moresby Woods. And out of that group that were ambushed, 17 of those men ran into Moresby Woods. They fled the attack. And not a single one of them was ever seen or heard from again. Now, from what I can gather, this is an actual real life event that has happened, and Fiona Barnett is fictionalising the solving of it, which also just makes me very happy because I love a good like unsolved conspiracy murder. And the end of the tagline for this book says, armed with metal detectors, GPS units, mobile phones and the most recent map of the area, which is nearly 50 years old, Dr. Christopher's group enters the woods ready for anything. Or so they think. I mean, what about that does not say dark academia? It is one person being so obsessed with this one subject that they will sacrifice anything to figure out the answer to it, and they may sacrifice other people along the way. What kind of more gothic setting are you going to get than ancient woodlands, which has consumed people? The book also does call it dark folk horror, but again, there's nothing in there which doesn't say yay me. By the end of the year, hold me accountable please people, if you don't see this on a TBR by at least November, hit me over the head. I mean gently, I don't actually have that many brain cells left to spare at this point. The next book up on this list is also a book which plays with some classic horror. One of my favourite books in the world is The Curious Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, which reimagines a bunch of classic horror books as all sort of existing in the same world and all being tangled together. And that is something that I have discovered really really works for me. It's one of the reasons that I finally picked up The Historian. It's one of the reasons why I am so excited for Reluctant Immortals. And basically now if I see any book which is playing with those classic horror tropes, I am picking it up. If you have any recommendations, then please leave them down below. And that is expressly what this book is doing. This is Our Hideous Progeny by C.E. McGill, and it is a retelling of Frankenstein. This is set in 1853 and we are following Victor Frankenstein, as in the person who created Frankenstein's monster's niece. Following Victor's niece. And Victor's niece is an incredibly smart person. She is in fact a scientist in her own right, and she wants to be able to have the same accolades as her uncle. She and her husband are a team, and they both know that they are worthy of being noted in some of the same societies and journals as her uncle was. But they have a bunch of things set against them. She's a woman, he's a gambling addict, none of them have any money, none of them can attract any kind of sponsors to fund their research. And then one day when Mary is, of course, going through Victor's notes about his creation of his monster, she realises the key. And she decides that the way that they are going to get the society and everybody in the academic field to take notice of them is if they make their own creature. Once they have created life, nobody will be able to ignore them again. But once they have successfully made their version of the creature, Mary starts to realise some of the things that Victor realised all that time ago. And things go awry, shall we say. Although having constructed a monster out of dead body parts, I would assume that things have already gone slightly awry. The cover for this is absolutely sensational. It grabbed me the minute that I saw it, and I am very looking forward to it. And then finally I have one more queer dark academia book to add to this list. And much like these Violent Delights, it is specifically about a relationship between two men which kind of spirals out of control. This is Typolo Blue by James Cahill. It is set in Cambridge in 1994. We follow Professor Don Lamb, who is writing a thesis on the Venetian, I think, artist Typolo, and this thesis is something that he has let kind of systematically invade and destroy all of his different areas of his life. Like his friendships and his love life have gone by the wayside for this thesis. He's kind of seen as like a master of the subject, but also like massively arrogant, and as much as he is charismatic, he repels the people around him. But then the blurb says something about one day a massive piece of contemporary art is installed on his lawn, as in like right outside his windows, and it's the only thing that he can see. And something about this piece of art makes him have to leave his university post. He ends up somehow in a museum in London curating exhibits, and it's there he meets a young painter. Ben is also an artist, but he is everything that is the antithesis of what Don knows. He completely reviles the idea of universities and academia and all of this deep learning. He's into the 1990s British art scene in London, which was very much like anarchy and screw the man. And he ends up deep into the 90s Soho nightlife, which was a massive like hub of queer culture. The thing that I really love about the blurb of this one is that it says that it takes place over like one long summer, so Dawn and Ben get really obsessively close really quickly, and they end up being completely like inextricably involved in each other's lives. And then the blurb says, as Don's life unravels, he suffers a fall from grace that shatters his world into pieces. So I am assuming that this obsessive relationship does not end well for Don, and I am very much hoping that I can see that. Because I think this book has the opportunity to depict a queer relationship in a dark academia setting and give it nuance. You know what I was saying earlier about books just existing to exhibit like queer depression? It very much sounds like Don gets dragged into a scene which is the complete opposite of that, where like queer joy is the point, and like joy in living is the point, and being against the rules is the point. And so I'm hoping that we get an obsessive, twisty, toxic relationship in this one, which doesn't eschew the idea that like queer, joyful love also exists. Again, all of the fingers, they are crossed, because I really feel like there needs to be more queer dark academia out there, and at this rate your girl's just gonna write it herself. So that's it, guys. That is the end of my dark academia TBR. Those are all of the priority books, the books that I would like to read in the months of September and November and December. Because if you're new here, hi, I do not seasonally read normally. I mean, I read all of my favourite genres all year round, but when we switch over onto September the 1st, I definitely start to prioritise my darker reads. And as I do not do winter reads or Christmas reads, I just take the coming of the darkness as a sign that I need to read more of my favourite genres. So like more horror, more haunted house stuff, more dark academia. Like a thumbs up from Mother Nature that I should just like and not come up for air. So if you have got this far into the video, then please leave me the candle emoji. Again, being up and sustained only by candlelight seems to be a very dark academia vibe. And if you have any dark academia recommendations which aren't already on this TBR, then please leave them down below, because I am dying for more. Don't forget that if you would like 20% off of your next Ana Luisa purchase, then you can use my link down below in the description box to complete your dark academia wardrobe. If you are new here and you would like to find out how I get on with these books, then please hit the subscribe button. And if you have liked this, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up, because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to you guys soon.